What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the Country Roads Webcast. Here we are together again for another episode of the CRW podcast. We're going to talk some Big 12 Media Days, give an update on the upcoming event this coming week. West Virginia will take place in, of course, out in Las Vegas for the first time, kind of accommodate the West Coast flavor of the league. And then we're going to talk a little bit of early Penn State talk, maybe take a look back at some highlights of West Virginia's wins that they've had over Penn State in the past, kind of wet our whistle, get ready for the big game coming up on August 31st. And joining me to help me do that is my two lovely co-hosts. We've got Steven.
What's going on, everybody?
And Bradley.
What up? Did you hear that, Stephen? We're lovely.
Absolutely. The
We're
loveliest
so
co-host in the business.
Lovely, man. I like it. I like that. It's a great introduction.
I'm excited, guys. I think it's going to be a fun episode. Got some interesting stuff to get into. Big Bubba Brad here had the great idea of going back, watching some old Penn State highlights. So we're going to kind of dive into that in our main portion here in a bit. And as promised on our last episode, we're going to get to Mountaineer Multiple Choice. Bring back y'all's favorite game show, our favorite game show, to close out the podcast here. That's what we'll round out the show with. But before we get into all that, guys, we got to talk a little bit more recruiting. Last time we got together, West Virginia had some impressive commits, but it's been a while since we had a chance to record, and we've knocked out a few more commits as well. West Virginia's recruiting class now over 20 commits. This 2025 recruiting class near the top of the Big 12 conference right now, and one of the top 20 in the country. The staff's doing an awesome job. I believe the last time that we got together, it was DeAndre Desenor and Tariq Mallory we were talking about. Since then, you see a slew of other commits, guys. I'm going to just run down these names really quick, and then I'm going to get your all's thoughts on how this recruiting class is shaping up. But since we've last met together, we've added Elgin Sessions, a defensive back from South Carolina, Ramondo Johnson, a defensive lineman from Florida, Taylor Brown, a defensive lineman from Maryland, Deuce Edwards, a cornerback from Virginia, Sammy Etienne, a cornerback from Florida, and then Sirius Stinyard, another cornerback from Florida, four-star defensive lineman Amir Leonard Charles from Tennessee, Montaven Quesenberry, a wide receiver from Kentucky, actually from Neil Brown's hometown, interestingly enough, another defensive back that's believed to be a spear at the next level, and Chris Filippo out of Pennsylvania, a linebacker and Michael Hasty out of Georgia, and then most recently a defensive lineman in Evan Powell out of Maryland, and another wide receiver commit with great length in Jaleel Hall out of Pennsylvania. Bradley, this 2025 recruiting class really shaping up to be a good one. Any thoughts on the recent commits or the class together as it stands as a whole?
Yeah, man. And this age and day in football, this is quantity. This is a lot of recruits. I mean, we've got significantly more than what you see in most other recruiting classes right now because a lot of people just don't. There's a big in between the transfer portal and recruiting. So, West Virginia is like the number 212 class in the Big 12 right now, top 20, and it's all due to having so many recruits. We do have some really top end quality in there, and Neil Brown makes, our whole brand is building with doing more with less, and so you look at these people and you know that just half of them are gonna be diamonds in the rough. They just got to be worked on, And some of these guys might not even be on the roster in a year and a half, 2 years. So it's just definitely interesting. If anything, refreshing to see Neil Brown. Like he stood on business and he said, last year in the throes of his losing season, or year before last in the throes of his losing season, he was more confident in the way he was building his program than ever in the new age. And it's you're seeing him stand by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that, when you're talking about the quantity, that's a good thing to have. Like you said, in today's day and age, you never know how the transfer portal is going to affect you, and having, that added depth at a lot of different positions. And you see West Virginia really targeting a lot of their needs. You see a lot of defensive backs in this class that really stands out and looks like they're building that up for the future, along, defensive linemen, receivers as well. Steven, what about you? What's your thoughts on this class? Anything you want to add there? Anything you got on any of these commits that we've had since the last time we've had a chance to talk?
No, I think you guys pretty much hit kind of the nail on the head there. I'm kind of going to more echo what you just said about, the added numbers in the defensive back position, in the defensive line position. I think it's no secret that, even though West Virginia's had good defensive backs and defensive linemen, we'll say over the last decade or more specifically in the Neil Brown era, we really haven't had that much depth. So, thinking about that and thinking about the way that they're recruiting, I think it's good to see that, they're planning for that depth, and not only for the transfer portal, but for, any other situations that could arise throughout the season, which, they always do arise throughout the season. So yeah. I don't know, I'm really liking the way that they're going about recruiting and the positions that they're going after. They don't really seem repetitive. I mean, I know that list has a lot more DBs on it than than other positions, but at the same time, it seems like they really seem to have been evening out the areas that they're recruiting from year to year. This year obviously we need to add depth to those positions, but that's one key thing that I really like out of this staff and the way that they recruit.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys know, see on here, I list them as DBs because you never know. We could recruit a guy that's, played corner and make him play safety and vice versa. So until we get on campus, see where they're going to land, I just like putting defensive back, and we'll see where they're going to be when
Hey,
they get to campus.
we could recruit a wide receiver and he could play DB.
You're right. You're right on
So,
that. It's happened
I will say
before.
we do see a lot of length on that on this list too. Lots of length.
Yeah, that's definitely something that stood out to me. And not only, offensively, when you look at, the receivers, we talked about Magic Mallory last episode that we did. Then we've added Jaleel Hall since then. He's also 6'4". But you look at some of the defensive backs and linebackers as well. Chris Filippo going to be a spear at 6'3". And then Michael Hasty. I mean, that's great size coming in for a linebacker, 6'3", 230. Leonard Jean Charles, one of the more impressive and more higher rated commits in the class. He's 6'4", 305 pounds. So definitely the length is there for sure. And, Bradley, I think you mentioned earlier the diamonds in the rough. And I think, to me, one of the biggest diamonds in the rough is Montavin Quisenberry. Watched his highlights on the commitment video I did for him on the YouTube side of things here on the CRW, and he really stood out to me. I think that he is one of those diamonds in the rough that could really be a playmaker down the line. And I like the mix that we're getting at wide receivers. You get the speed and the quick twitch with Quisenberry, can make people miss. Kind of the smaller, diminutive guy, probably going to play in the slot. And then, like I mentioned with Mallory and Hall, you get that length on the outside. So West Virginia recruiting, like you said, multiple different body types, but really a lot of guys that are going to help in future rosters, I believe.
One guy that I've really been still keeping an eye on is a guy that's already committed to another school, but I'm holding out hope for Chris Henry Jr., man. With obviously with the lineage of, his dad playing here, but also when you add in, Pac-Man was his adopted father, godfather, and, Pac-Man obviously played here as well. So I always thought that there would be a little bit of an influence on him, but, can't be mad at him for choosing the Ohio State for playing the position that he does as well as he does.
So, yeah, he's elite. He's elite at what he does. So
that's the thing. So. He can go to any school in the country that he wants. So definitely, wish the best for him for sure.
But nowadays, 2 or 3 years down the road.
Hey, good point.
I've been saying the same thing. You never know. He's coming. I think he's a 2026 recruit.
2026. Yep.
2026. So there's still time for him to flip. He's only a verbal at Ohio State right now, but potentially, like you're right, Brad. I thought about that too. He potentially could transfer out of there and come to West Virginia. But if I'm being honest, as much as I hate to admit this, if you're a wide receiver and you play at that elite of an ability, it's that school or LSU. That's the two you want to go to. So
you're not lying there. They've produced some big time receivers. But as far as this recruiting class is concerned, we'll scroll back up to the top here so you guys can see the top half of the commits if you're watching the video version now as well. I'm sure you guys know most of these names, but of course you can always get updates on these recruits as they come in by following the CRW YouTube channel. We try and do a good job of keeping track of them as the commits come in. And of course, the closer we get to signing day, the more we'll be talking about these recruits. Signing day quickly approaching here in December, and West Virginia near a full class already, doing an excellent job, as Brad stated there. Top 2 class in the Big 12 right now, top 20 class in the nation, and hopefully just continues to build up. So definitely going to be, make impacts in the Big 12. I think a lot of these recruits will. And speaking of that Big 12 conference, guys, we do got something else to discuss, and that, of course, is upcoming Big 12 Media Days. This past week, we had the preseason poll released. We've had, the preseason all-conference teams released. So let's take a look at that really quickly as soon as I can find it here on the page. Here is the preseason poll. I'm sure most of you guys have seen this already, but if you haven't, here's how it kind of shook out. Utah was selected first, Kansas State at 2, Oklahoma State 3, Kansas 4th, Arizona 5th, Iowa State 6th, West Virginia 7th, UCF 8th, Texas Tech 9th, TCU 10, Colorado 11, Baylor 12, BYU 13, Cincinnati 14, Houston 15, and Arizona State at the bottom at 16. So a little bit more respect for the Mountaineers this year. Last year they were picked 14th, cut that number in half this year. They're predicted in the top half of the conference there at 7. So initial thoughts when you guys first saw this preseason poll, what were you thinking, Stephen?
Isn't it obvious? I understand some of why, we were put so low, because if you look at the teams ahead of us, Some of them have proven that they should be ahead of us. I believe Oklahoma State's going to be contending for a conference championship. I believe K-State's going to contend for a conference championship. Um, I don't see it with Arizona. I know me and you talked a little bit before that, before the pre-show. Arizona playing in a new conference with a new coach, not happening. I just don't understand. I know you're really high up on their quarterback.
Fafita.
I don't think two players are going to make them be that successful, especially if you compare them to a team like West Virginia. And of course, we're biased, but like a team like West Virginia that returns every key player that they had last year that contributed to a 9-win season, and then you've only added key players in other positions that you really lacked. It makes no sense to me. Obviously, I'm biased, but even when you look at the numbers on paper and you look at the PFF grades among West Virginia and where a lot of our guys are picked in the preseason, it just I don't agree with it, just to put it politely.
Hey, I feel you there. I feel you. I think that a lot of Mountaineer Nation, agrees with you on that one for sure. But Bradley, what about you? What were kind of your thoughts? Do you agree with that? Do you think West Virginia should have been higher as well?
I don't know. I think that's about right where I would have West Virginia in the mix. Obviously, I'm a bit more biased and want to see us above Iowa State and Arizona. I think that we've shown that we can be more competitive in the Big 12 than them in this. But, it is what it is. Media polls or whatever. I'm just, I'm surprised that Colorado wasn't in the top three.
I know if EA Sports was making this, was voting on the poll, they'd probably be number one.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say,
yeah, that shocked me as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that the Big 12 is such a big mix this year. For me personally, I think that everybody's going to be swinging, especially with Oklahoma and Texas being gone. We don't know what the season's going to turn out to be. It's going to be an absolutely insane season. I mean, the most competitive league, I would still say top to bottom. So you got a couple bottom dwellers now, but that are going to get it right eventually. Houston's still a sleeping program when they get their feet under them in a couple of years. But, yeah, dude, I would say all media polls are out the door at this point in time. So, but I really did like your statistic that you brought up the other day, Jordan. So I think that's a nice little tidbit to the season.
Yeah, definitely. For you guys that didn't catch that or haven't heard that, what it is, I texted them in the group when I discovered it or whatever. I talked about it a little bit on a live stream as well. But if you look at the preseason poll from both last season, 2023, and the season before in 2022, in 2022, the 7th spot in the Big 12 preseason poll, TCU. Of course, we know they went on to win the conference that year, play for a national championship as well. Then last year, 2023, the 7th spot in the Big 12 preseason poll, Oklahoma State, who went on to win the conference. So, hopefully West Virginia can make it a trend, make it 3 times in a row, and the team that's picked 7th go on to win the conference. When I heard that, I wasn't as upset about us being predicted 7th. I'm personally just a little bit happy that they put a little bit of respect on our name and have us in the top half of the conference. I think I kind of agree with Bradley and Steven both that I would probably have us 5th or 6th at least. But, 7th, not too shabby. And hopefully with that little caveat that we brought up there, that little tidbit, maybe we can make history repeat itself and the Mountaineers go on and win the Big 12 or at least secure a spot in that Big 12 title game at season's end. But, I like your point there, Bradley. Once the game kick off and we got these going on the gridiron, this poll's not even as good as the paper that it's written on. So definitely, when we get onto the field, that's when it's all going to be decided.
One thing that I think really jumps out to me about this list, other than the rankings portion of it, is Arizona got 3 votes for number 1 in the conference. That thoroughly shocks me.
Yeah, that new coaching staff coming into a new conference, they're a lot of people are high on them, and I understand the love for Utah as well, but I think in the same kind of scenario goes with them, just because they're coming into a new conference, but also we don't. I mean, obviously we know Cameron Rising's a talented player. We know the tight end, Keith is a talented player as well, but both of those guys, we don't know how they're going to bounce back from those injuries. Are they going to be playing at the same level they were prior to those injuries? We're just going to have to wait and see. So it's interesting to me that, they're kind of the media darling right now, but we'll see how it shakes out. I think that, if it was me, K-State would have been my number 1 probably. I think that they're going to have a really good team this year.
Yeah, I can't stand Utah, so.
To me,
is this now a U down? U down? Is that what it is
down.
now?
Yeah, that's what it is. To me, I just feel like if Utah's been picked to win the Pac-12 for the past what I believe is the last 3 years under Cam Rising, and not one time have they finished atop of the of the Pac-12. So I just find it I find it hard to believe that they're going to switch conferences and be able to take over just like that.
I do too.
I just don't see it.
I do too. And the only other thing that I want to point out, guys, is if we look at West Virginia's schedule, and I think we all talked about this a little bit in our group chat. West Virginia's schedule there, their first, I think, 5 conference games are against all these teams right here: Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and I think it's Iowa State as well. But definitely, we're going to have a chance to, prove this poll wrong right off the bat in conference play. And if you look at the way the schedule shakes out, if you can get through those 5 games, looking pretty good, then that back half sets up nicely for you. So I think it's interesting. The number 3 team here, Oklahoma State, and the number 5 team, West Virginia, plays both those on the road. If you can win at least one of those, I think you're in good shape, because we know West Virginia does a good job in home games usually. So definitely West Virginia is going to have a chance to, prove the naysayers wrong yet again right from the beginning of conference play, really.
Yeah, I do believe that the Arizona game, maybe more than any other game on the schedule besides, the obvious ones, maybe more than any other game on the schedule, kind of scares me into being a trap game, because, you play Kansas State at home, then you have to go out to Arizona after a bye week, I believe. It's either after the bye week or just before one. And then you got to turn around and you go, like, I know it's just a hop, skip, and a jump over to Cincinnati, but that's what scares me about it is, you could be potentially jet lagged for that Arizona game because you're in close proximity. And
that's all the way across the country, basically.
That's exactly it. But we do play well in the desert, though, so that gives me hope.
True. Good point. So that's a little bit of a look at the media poll. Let's talk a little bit about some of the preseason picks here. Obviously, preseason offensive player of the year, Ollie Gordon, and we're going to have to see what happens with that. I'm sure by the time West Virginia plays the Cowboys, he will probably be back for that game, but we'll see if he has dealt any type of suspension with the off-the-field issues that came up with him this past week. And then, of course, preseason defensive player of the year, no surprise, Travis Hunter of Colorado, arguably the best defensive back in the country, I think. Two-way player, really just a stud on the football field. Can't knock him at all. Preseason newcomer of the year. How about this one? UCF quarterback KJ Jefferson transferring in from Arkansas. Think that they're really high on him there with, Gus Malzahn, who previously coached Cam Newton. They're kind of expecting him to be that same type of player. We'll see how it shakes out. He's had kind of a mixed bag at Arkansas. Started off really hot.
Same body type.
Same body type, exactly. I definitely think that it's something interesting to watch, and we're going to see if I think UCF's a team that, if I'm looking at someone that's not picked in that, kind of top half there, that's kind of the sleeper that I'm looking at is UCF. I think that they've got a chance to be a pretty good team this year.
I thought the same thing last year about UCF. I was thoroughly surprised that they didn't have as good of a season, or at least a little bit better than a season that they did. I was kind of shocked that they didn't do that well.
Me as well. And then let me pull up the preseason team in general here, because we did have one Mountaineer represented on the offensive side at least. West Virginia was shut out on the defensive side. As you can see here, no Mountaineers there. On the defensive side, you got Tyler Batty from BYU, Dante Corleone from Cincinnati, BJ Green from Colorado, Lee Hunter from UCF, Junior Tafanu from Utah, Jacob Manu from Arizona, the 2 linebackers from Oklahoma State, Nick Martin and Colin Oliver. You get Tacario Davis and Travis Hunter. You get Jeremiah Cooper from Iowa State, and then 2 defensive backs from Kansas and Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson, and Jack Baumeister from Utah as the punter there. I think on the defensive side, guys, the biggest snub for me, Aubrey Burks. Aubrey Burks is on that first team, in my opinion. He's got to have one of those DB spots, I think. But at season's end, we'll see. I think there's a good chance he'll end up on there.
I truly thought that Sean Martin had a strong chance to be in one of the defensive linemen on that list as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see at least a couple Mountaineers on the defensive All Big 12 team at the end of the season.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I actually look for it to be there. I'm predicting it, I guess. This is my prediction.
Yeah, especially in that linebacker role.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Trotter and Latham, both those guys are going to be monsters, I think.
Little spoiler alert, that's one thing that really gives me as much confidence as I have going into this season is I don't remember a team that has had a linebacking core as deep as West Virginia is going to have this year. Proven.
It's felt like our cursed position. It has felt like a cursed position.
It absolutely
for a decade and a half.
And we have not just guys that we've heard this guy's good and he's going to come in and fill this void. No, we've got guys we've seen him play. We've seen him wear the blue and
Every
gold
single
and
one
do
of
work.
them.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm so thrilled to
Well,
be confident in
and
that
just to
position.
go along with that, how deep it is the fact that the guy that had to start most of the last season, Ben Cutter, is going to be in a more reserve role this year, and he's got all
Right.
that experience under his belt. And then the other guy that's probably going to be a second stringer when we're talking about Reed Carrico, the transfer in from Ohio State, is the guy that had a 96 grade as a recruit and was a 5-star recruit up there, one of the top linebackers in the entire country, a top 10 linebacker in the country coming out of high school, actually. And those two guys are going to be your reserves, probably behind Lathan and Trotter. So that depth is there and that talent is there as well.
Yeah, which would you say reserve? That doesn't mean like they're going to play. They're going to
Yeah.
play
Oh, yeah. They're going to get a ton of
significant time,
reps.
but
Yeah, absolutely.
that just gives you fresh legs. And I think that for a team like West Virginia and what we struggled with, I think that's the best thing that you can have. Obviously you want top tier recruits and you want, numbers, but I think more than anything else, you want to have depth, especially when you play in the league that we play in.
And it's interesting. It's kind of flipped. Last year, the defensive line was super deep. This year they're still going to have the depth on the defensive line, but just not as much. Some of that due to injuries. We're going to be missing Corey McIntyre Jr., but in the back half of that defense, we talked about the linebackers and the secondary as well. It's going to have a ton of depth too. So at least West Virginia has more depth across the board than last year. You had a lot of depth on the D line and you were really thin on the linebacker and in the defensive back room. This year across the board, the defense has, the most depth by far this coaching staff has had. So it's something to be excited about if you're a Mountaineer fan.
But at the same time, I believe, with the linebacking core being as deep as they are, the way that we run our defense, you could pretty much run a defensive lineman linebacker hybrid that plays, a little bit up on the line. It can help that defensive line get pressure. So that doesn't scare me as much as it should. But
Is Ollie Gordon asterisked because of the
I think it's
DUI?
I think it's the player. I was wondering that too. I think it's the player of the year. I think because let me see if
well, I didn't notice that
maybe,
until you just said that.
it's okay. I guess
Unanimous.
Travis Hunter don't have it's unanimous. Okay, so he was unanimous.
Yikes.
Yeah, terrible timing for that to come out too. It was literally, I think, the day before or the day of that this stuff was released. So
Right.
yeah, definitely interesting. I'm just anxious to see what happens there because I think they play somebody early in a conference game. So I'm wondering if he'll have any. Like I would suspect him to be there in that first tough conference game they have. Maybe he'll get like a 2-3 game suspension, be out for the non-con. We'll see what happens though, how that shakes out. But speaking of that, on the offensive side, this is the preseason offensive Big 12 team here on the screen. If you're watching on the YouTube side, if you're listening here on the podcast version, I'll shout them out for you. The quarterback, Shadur Sanders, rated. Sorry, something stuck in my throat. Running back, Ollie Gordon II, and Taj Brooks from Texas Tech. The fullback, Steve O'Clotes from Iowa State. Tatario McMillan from Arizona. That's an impressive wide receiver. Big 12 fans, if you haven't checked him out, go watch some of his highlights. I think he's one of the best in the country. Kobe Hudson from UCF on there. And then you round out the receivers with Jaden Higgins from Iowa State and Brennan Presley from Oklahoma State. Tight end, we mentioned Cameron Rising. He's making his return, but so is Brant Keith, the talented tight end there at Utah. He gets the first team nod. Then you look at the offensive linemen. You get Jonah Savina from Arizona, Luke Kandra from Cincinnati, 2 Oklahoma State offensive linemen in Dalton Cooper and Joe Mikulski, and then our very own West Virginia native Wyatt Milam, one of the best offensive tackles in the country, potential future first-round draft pick, I think, on the first team as well. He should be. And then, of course, the kicker, Tyler Loop from Arizona, and the specialist, Dre McRae from Texas Tech. Any thoughts here on the offensive preseason team there, Bradley?
Yeah, I'd love to see a West Virginia boy on there. Of course, that's the most exciting thing. You see a lot of Oklahoma, you see a lot of Florida, you see a lot of Georgia, you see a lot of Texas. You don't see a lot of Arkansas, you don't see a lot of Indiana, you don't see a lot of Mississippi, but you see West Virginia. So that's nice.
That's right. Stephen, what about you?
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say. I mean, you really can't say much about this list. I mean, there's not many. Obviously, you'd like to see a lot more West Virginia names on there. But, with the names that are on this list, given a couple of them, there's not really too much to argue. Ollie Gordon obviously deserves that spot. Taj Brooks obviously deserves that spot. Jaden Higgins obviously deserves that spot. So, just glad to see not only a WVU player, but a West Virginia kid be able to solidify that spot.
Yeah, if I had one argument It'd probably be tight end, just because Keith didn't play last season. Was out with the injury, and I think I saw someone put it up on social media comparing his stats versus Cole Taylor's stats from the year prior to his injury. And Cole Taylor's stats actually were a lot better last season than Keith's were. And, I didn't realize he was so small as well, only 236 pounds there at the tight end. He's almost like a extra receiver or something, but I'm sure that they use him a ton. We'll see what happens this year, but don't rule out Cole Taylor making a case for that all Big 12 team at season's end as well.
I did not. I honestly didn't really notice that to think about it, but you're right.
It's like a little fullback that they put out a tight end.
Yeah, I'd say that that's literally probably the only fullback option they had. There's not too many Big 12 teams that use a fullback anymore.
I was wondering if they just picked one, because you don't really see people use specifically a fullback. You've got a bigger running back, but
yeah, or usually they just put their tight end in the backfield if they're going to use one.
Or a lineman, yeah.
But yeah, definitely. So that's a look at the Big 12 preseason team there, and then let's go back here. Let me talk a little bit about the Big 12 media days. Let you guys know when you can expect to see the Mountaineers here.
If you had to guarantee a role that we will have, other than Wyatt Milam, but at the end of the season, if you had to pick a role on our offense that you think would have the next All-American on it, what role would it be?
Ooh, good question. Good question. Oh, man. I want to say running back because, Jaheim's my dude, and CJ I think is going to have a big bounce back year as well. But it's tough because, Ollie Gordon and Taj Brooks are both, very good as well.
Exactly.
If anything, maybe they could take Taj Brooks' spot, but I only say that just because Texas Tech doesn't tend to give him the carries that he deserves. They're a little bit pass happy, so maybe that could fall in our favor. But I guess I'd have to pick running back or maybe quarterback even. GG.
Yeah, I was wondering if Garrett Green was.
Immediately when you asked that question, my mind went to if we line CJ up as a fullback specifically instead of a running back, we got that position on lock.
That's a good point too.
So maybe switching to fullback.
Just list him on the depth chart at fullback so he can just take that spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's anybody else on the offensive line that also make that push.
That's a good point.
I believe so. Not to slight Wyatt in any way at all, because he's obviously very deserving of that spot. But I think that even just guys on his own offensive line could make a push, to be right there with him on that list. So I think Tomas Remack is going to have a heck of a year this year, boys.
I'm curious about Brandon Yates. I think Brandon Yates might thrive a little bit in the center position.
Too. Hey, they can say what they want. I'm of the belief that this. Yeah, I'm of the belief that this offensive line could be very much as good as the offensive line last year. I know that if you listen to any Tony Caridi, he is not of that belief. He just thinks that it is too astronomical of a task to attain. But I don't see why. I think the talent level is there. I think the number is there, the depth is there, the experience is there. I don't see any reason on why this team can't be as good up front as they were last year. If not better, they might be better just because the offense might gel a little bit more than they did last year. I think we had a little bit more question marks about how the offense was ran. You know what I mean? Like we had some questions in the receiving game. So then we had to depend on the running game a little bit more as you go through the season. The receiving game starts to open up a little bit more. So I don't think that chemistry was always there for them last year, and they still did a heck of a job. So I think when you add chemistry along the whole offense, that only helps them. So
that's a great point.
Very optimistic.
I am too. I think that they have a chance. It's going to be different, obviously, but doesn't mean it's going to be worse. I think it's got a chance, like you said, to be on par, maybe even better if we're lucky. And one thing we know about this team and these guys on this team is that they get motivated by, negativity, wanting to prove people wrong. So I'm sure they're hearing the talk that this offensive line may take a step back, from national media, even from, like you said, some of their own WVU media, and they're going to want to prove people wrong there as well. So I think they're going to be hungry and ready to show it on August 31st. But before we get there, of course, we got Big 12 Media Days coming up this coming week, July 9th and 10th, for the first time out in Las Vegas, actually. Moving out of Texas, moving to Las Vegas for the first time there. It's going to be in the Radiator Stadium there in Allegiant Stadium. Like I said, it starts July 9th if you want to look at the schedule here. But what we're concerned about, obviously, is West Virginia Mountaineers. When's Neil Brown going to take the podium? And if you look here on the Big 12 Sports site, you can see it's going to be Wednesday, July 10th, around 2:40 Eastern time is when you can hear from head coach Neil Brown. So if you're looking just specifically to, check out WVU, tune in around then. But, you can check out all the Big 12 talk starting July 9th around 1 p.m. Eastern time there with Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. Some people are even expecting we may get the conference name change announced at Big 12 Media Days. We'll see what happens with that, but that's kind of a look at the schedule there for Mountaineer fans as we kind of wrap up our Big 12 Media Days talk. Anything you guys want to add there in regards to Big 12 Media Days?
Not to add, but I do want to ask a question. So this name change that is supposedly on the table for the Big 12, it's only for the sponsorship of the name, right? They're not switching from the Big 12, or could that potentially be an option as well?
The name of the conference as well. So I think it's going to be like it'll be a sponsor, but I think whatever the sponsor is, they're going to kind of go off the name from that. Like the things that I've heard was either like All State Big 12 Conference or Big All State Conference. Like if it was
And
All State, something along those lines.
please, for the love of God, do not. I will hate that so much if
It
it's
sounds, it
purely
sounds so
like if it's the All-State Big 16 or what is it, 18 teams, 16 teams?
I think it's 16 now. That's why I don't understand why they're still wanting to keep Big 12 as the name. Like, what can we at least be the Big 16?
Right. Like I mean stick with what makes sense at least, but at the same do not do I heard someone say the All-State Conference, like it's just
Yeah,
the namesake of the sponsorship conference.
I think that's what's on the table is whatever the sponsor is, they want their name in the conference name.
Which I get that. I get the whole that's been in bowl games for however long. You got the Tostitos
Right.
Fiesta Bowl, the Toyota Gator Bowl, whatever they are now. But that I get. But if you're gonna switch the name of the conference, switch it to something that at least makes traditional sense to the game of college football. Don't just sponsorship everything and then just leave it at that. I don't know. I very much not a fan if that's the case.
It's going to be weird. That's for sure. But as we wrap up Big 12 talk, now we can look ahead to, some way too early, Penn State talk. And just to kind of, like we said, we want to wet our whistle for that. We want to talk about some fun times where we've beaten Penn State. And we're going to start that off with the 1984 highlights here, courtesy of the university's media team during the WVU 125 campaign here. And we're just kind of going to watch these and react to them a little bit with you guys. We're going to take a look at the 84 game, and then we're going to look at some of the highlights from the 88 game as well, where West Virginia won kind of in dominating fashion there. But, of course, we'll lead it off here with the 84 game, guys. And let's check it out.
For 29 years, the Penn State game had been West Virginia's worst nightmare, but all that was about to change. The Mountaineer defense took control early on as the game turned into a brutal battle, with both sides struggling to gain the edge. Fullback Ron Wolfley put West Virginia on top 7-0. But when DJ Dozier burst through the line and rumbled into the end zone, ghosts of seasons past began to haunt the Mountaineers. Finally, in the fourth quarter, place kicker Paul Woodside put West Virginia back on top with a 49-yard field goal. Penn State came charging back, only to have the Mountaineer defense take the ball away and allow halfback Pat Randolph to write a brand new chapter of Mountaineer history.
And the handoff given to Randolph, with blocker swings out to the right, cuts down up to the 20, to 15, to 10, to 5. Touchdown, West Virginia!
One of my favorite calls of all time.
This was it. The 17-14 victory over Penn State was the biggest win in Mountaineer field history. The Mountaineers had arrived. West Virginia football was second to none.
Cruz, before we start on this, I do want to throw something out there. At the spring game, I know that you mentioned, what would you think if they put the outline logo with the flying WV in the middle, if they did that to the football field? And initially, I told Cruz that I would not like that idea. I don't know why I said that I didn't like it. I guess because growing up with the flying WV on the field, that's just traditional for me. But going back and looking at some of those games, that is a beautiful logo on the center of that field with the state outline. So I might have been wrong in my judgment on that.
I really hope we start using it more and more. I love it. I think when we drove by the baseball field and seen it on there, and it just looks so good. I was like, man, on the football field,
good,
that might be all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like it too because you still get the flying WV, but you get inside the state. So I'm like, yeah, it's a nice touch.
Yeah. I mean, at first when they unveiled that logo, I was like, how simplistic. But the more that I look at it and the more that we use it, it grows on me. And, just because of what all it has in it,
Yeah, and I mean, there's not too many states that have that are super identifiable just from the outset. There's a lot of box states, nothing interesting. West Virginia state line's got a lot of character.
Oh yeah, you got the double panhandles. Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah.
Shout out to me. I don't know if anybody that is watching this podcast has played MLB The Show 24 or knows the customization features that you have on that game. But I have created every logo that West Virginia has ever pretty much had, other than the Mountaineer, the iconic Mountaineer, because obviously that one's a very hard logo to create with some just random shapes. But the other day I did create the flying outline of West Virginia, and I must say it is quite spot on. And
that's beautiful.
Anybody that's tried to even draw that knows how difficult that is. So shout out to me.
Hey, that's good stuff, man. I like it. Hopefully some people download that. If you're playing MLB The Show, check that out.
Shout out, 1,300 people have downloaded it off of there. So
dang, already. So hey, somebody listening to this has gotta know that logo. So hey, leave it in the comments. If you downloaded that from MLB The Show, let us know because it's from this man right here.
Yeah, please do. Please do. KO Ballin if you see me on there.
That's awesome. That's awesome for sure. But definitely, man. So West Virginia, finally gets the win in '84. Beats Penn State after a long drought, and hopefully that's something that we'll be able to do again this year. And wouldn't it be fitting? What would it be exactly 40 years later to finally beat them again on Mountaineer Field in 2024? Definitely don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. But it wouldn't be the only time we would beat them. Obviously, 4 years later in the very special 1988 season, West Virginia would kind of win in dominating fashion against Penn State. And we do have some highlights of that game we're going to dive into now. This one's a little bit longer. Video quality, not as great. Obviously, no HD back then. But, hey, we got to work with what we got, and we're going to have some fun watching these, though. So here we go, West Virginia, Penn State, 88.
The Lions in their white uniforms kick off right
to
left. And here's John Atkins sends it well downfield. Napoleon at the 4, muffs the catch, picks it up at the 10, goes over the 50.
I forgot about that. Takes it all the way back.
Tackler goes over the
Not all the way
the far side of the field.
Napoleon.
Finally is caught
Eddie
Johnson and Henry Atkins.
This game may well be my favorite Penn State game in history.
Over to the right side.
Let's play Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really watched any of our Penn State games.
Actually, I think you can find
Brad, I'll tell you, man, go on YouTube and look at the 88 game. I was reluctant at first because I didn't know how good the quality would be, but it's surprisingly very good quality.
Yeah, the full game, and you find it's a lot better quality than this highlight. There's the run, boys.
Yeah. There's the
Is that Garrett
run.
Green? Is that Garrett Green?
Hey, you want to know something, though?
That's a 9 out of 6.
It's a long way.
Hey, love Pat to death, but I think the most player that we've had that was major-esque was Rasheed Marshall, man. He looks a spitting image the way he would run the ball like Major.
Slot right formation. And they're strong left. Then they pitch the ball back to Brad. He muffs it. He loses it. Fumble recovered by West Virginia. They've got the ball at the Penn State 40.
Yeah, I'll definitely think
big fumbles in these games.
Look at that. Oh, my gosh. The nostalgia.
In both the games, there was a really big fumble.
It is 1st and 15.
Yeah. That was a very strong constant in old college football was the amount of fumbles that took place. I mean, it was
just running the balls.
Yeah, and you had such hard hitters with big shoulder pads. Reggie Rivers.
That was beautiful, man. They thought they were running the option, and we just faked out everything.
Touchdown for the Mountaineers. All right, Penn State lining up now.
Shout out Jack Fleming also. Iconic.
Kicking from the 31, a 41-yard attempt that is blocked, and the ball is loose and is recovered back around the 30. At the Penn State 49 now. The running room is to the left. Phillips and Rembert.
See, and I don't mind that either with the logo offset like that.
And Harris is back deep.
Look at Major's arm, man.
Yeah, everybody talks about his legs, man. He's got very underrated arms.
It looks like Garrett Green, dude, is just throwing bombs, just throwing
I'm telling you.
absolute missiles
guys,
down
but
the
Garrett
field.
Green, man, I'm telling you what, guys, I
and you guys know,
can't tell you how excited and optimistic.
Neil Brown and the whole team remembers James Franklin punching in that late touchdown. He mentioned it on podcast throughout the offseason. So it's definitely something we're going to remember when that team rolls around.
Even I had forgotten about that, but that gives me extra motivation going in.
5 seconds left in the game.
Sends Bell in motion left to right, wide, working out of the I formation. And he hands the ball up, and here comes
Andrew Johnson. Forget about it.
What a run.
Andrew Johnson and Eugene Napoleon both had some nice plays in this game.
Avery Johnson doesn't get talked about enough in the history of WV sports.
That was some real top end speed.
There's Eugene. Shouting out a lot of people on this show, but I'll tell you what, shout out Eugene Napoleon. Not only was he a great college football player, but also just a great, decent human being.
Yeah.
There is a great play. That was West Virginia's Tim Newsom from Mount Hope coming in to grab him.
Mount Hope.
Look at that. We're already on the field, man.
For all intent and purposes, this one is over.
That's not what I watched the 84 game last year, and I remember that's how it was because we got 17-14, got that interception, and there was 20 seconds left, and they were doing the same thing on the field, taking the goalpost down. Had to go back, had to run everybody off the field. Yep. But there we are, 88, the dominating win for the Mountaineers over Penn State, and that's just a couple of fun things to watch and look forward to, and hopefully we can repeat those victories this year. But, as we look ahead to Penn State, guys, for this upcoming season, way too early thoughts. What are you thinking with the matchup against Penn State? I know the line came out, it was like 14 points. It's moved down closer to, the 10-point mark. West Virginia, 10-point underdog at home. West Virginia plays good as a home underdog. And I think, obviously, when I want to ask you guys, I think we all have faith that the game's going to be a lot closer than, that 2-touchdown margin or whatever. But what are you guys thinking as far as atmosphere for this game, attendance for this game? I know we all were probably kind of hoping it would be at night, but what are we talking? You think it's going to be absolute madhouse, LSU 2011? What type of atmosphere are you expecting, Stephen?
Very much so. From what I can gather around the fan base, at least the ones that regularly attend games, all of us are extremely optimistic about this game. It's no secret what kind of a game that Penn State is for specifically to West Virginia. Penn State's a big game for anybody on their schedule, but for specifically for us being an old rival and having the history that we just watched us having, that's just a touch in the iceberg on that. I very much expect Mountaineer Nation to show up and show out for game one, especially in Morgantown. So, yeah, I expect a very ruckus environment. Now, if you're talking if it'll top LSU in 2012, don't know about that. I don't know if that's going to be topped for quite some time. I think West Virginia is going to have to push into the top 10, being a top 10 matchup in Morgantown at night, if we're even going to come close to topping that, if I'm truly being honest. But yeah, I expect it to be a good atmosphere.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. I think it'll be probably one of the best noon atmospheres we've had in a while, for sure. Like you said, if it was at night, it might challenge that, but we'll see. They may surprise us there in Mountaineer Nation. But Bradley, what about you? Any way too early thoughts about the matchup with the Nittany Lions to kick off the season?
Yeah, no, you talk about atmosphere. No, I think it's going to be absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. May God watch over Morgantown if the student body wins a 12 p.m. game against Penn State. But yeah, no, I think
Cruz will watch over it.
Yeah, right. I think it's all going to depend on how really WVU comes out in the very beginning. I think that's probably would be my earliest call. It's just like, hey, how does the game start? Because I think it's going to be all about capitalizing on being on your home field. Like the spark on the dynamite that's going to blow this bitch.
Hey, that's right. That's right.
Now,
with you there.
I do want to add to that. You asked also how we felt about the game.
Yep.
Do you really want that opinion now, or do you want me to give that during the SPR in a few weeks?
I mean, we'll keep it kind of broad, and we'll dive in, more during the season prediction roundtable. But yeah, throw it at me.
I'll keep it. I'll keep it kind of toned down just a little bit, but overall, I feel good about the game. Given the history of the game, it makes me second guess things.
Yeah.
You just heard on that highlight tape a few minutes ago on the 84 when the first one that we just watched that it took 28 years. 28 years. That's not playing Penn State every other year, every third year. That's every single year we played Penn State for 30 years and did not beat the Nittany Lions. That terrifies me in the grand scheme of things when talking about just this general game. But overall optimistic about things given all of that.
I am too. The one thing that I've kind of been looking at is I've trying to, hone in more on Penn State a little bit, trying to see what they've got coming this year. I know offensively they've, returned a lot as far as, quarterback, both the running backs, some different bodies in there at receiver. But one thing that stands out to me is last year Penn State's defense extremely good. And I'm sure, Penn State's going to have a good defense again. They, kind of always do. They recruit really well. But they've lost a lot of pieces, breaking in a lot of new pieces versus a West Virginia offense that returns nearly everyone, save for Zach Frazier, and they're replacing him with extreme experience along that offensive line that we already talked about. So I think if West Virginia's defense is taking that step up, like I believe they will, it's going to be a lot more even matchup than last year because I think West Virginia offense is going to have the advantage over Penn State's defense. That's just my way too early thoughts there on that one. But Bradley, anything you want to add?
I think that we are going to be a step above what we were last year, and I think that we have a chance to really come into this, and it could swing a multitude of ways. I just want to see it be a competitive game. So
yeah,
I don't know, but first game of the season makes it tough. You know what I mean?
It does.
Yeah,
makes it tough to call.
I will say this. This isn't a make or break game for me. If West Virginia comes out and loses this game, am I going to be down on the rest of this? No, I'm not. We still got the rest of the Big 12 Conference to play. We got another team from the state of Pennsylvania in 2 weeks that happens to eat shit that we get to play, and we're going to go up there and smack them in the mouth. So things are going to live. Things will be all right if we happen to fumble this one. But
yeah, but on the other side of that coin, if we happen to win this game, man, exactly you talk about betting up for a special season, like. Whew, that's what keeps coming into my head is what if we beat Penn State to open this season and then we're looking down the pipe of the schedule and we're like, hey man, we might win this whole conference and
in equal senses. I will equally be happy about that and terrified about that because if you open the season against Penn State and you do that, I promise you will be ranked going into the next season or going into the next week against Albany. I want to believe that this team has the ability to do that and be able to confidently move forward, playing in conference play, being a ranked team. But at the same time, history has only proven itself time and time again to us. So I want it to happen, scared of it to happen.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 because we play so good as the underdog as well, for sure.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But anything else you guys want to throw out real quick, or are you guys ready to dive in on some Mountaineer Multiple Choice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see Steve over shaking in his timbers.
All right. So having said that, guys, our final segment here, we teased it last episode, ran out of time, didn't get to it, but now we're going to bring it back. Mountaineer Multiple Choice, our game show here on the Country Roads Webcast. If you guys aren't familiar with it, I've got the Mountaineer Multiple Choice Trivia 10 here I'm going to break into for the first time in a while. Since we're all three together here, going to ask Stephen and Bradley some multiple choice trivia questions. The way it works, you got obviously multiple choice A, B, C, or D. Get a correct answer, you get 3 points. If your answer is incorrect, the other player has a chance to steal, which is worth 5 points. And we'll play a few rounds here and see who comes out as the winner in our first one here in 2024. Let me grab the old faithful trivia 10 here, and we'll get into it. All right, so who's up first? Who's going first? Who wants first question? Don't everybody
Bradley's muted, but he was giving an idea.
I want it. I said B.
He said, give it to me. I want it.
All right.
Confident.
All right, let's see what we got here. Also, there's some state trivia involved now too. It's not just Mountaineer related. And right off the bat, we have some state trivia actually. So nice. All right, Brad. Which town in West Virginia holds the longest steel arch bridge in the United States within its borders? Is it A, Fayetteville, B, Morgantown, C, Summersville, or D, Point Pleasant?
I promise you get this wrong, Brad. We're fighting.
I'm going to say, and I'm going to be honest, I'm definitely caught between the two, but I'm going to say it's Fayetteville.
Correct. Good job
Okay.
there, Brad.
It's
Good
got to
job.
be, right? It's got to be.
Yeah. I
So
don't know. Summers
3
County makes it tricky. You put those two together, it's like they just blend together when you're driving off, up 19.
I had
That
to
is
throw
true.
Point
That is
Pleasant in
true.
there because the bridge collapsed. I thought maybe that would trick somebody.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. I just immediately when you said the longest steel arch bridge, I was like, it's a gorge. It's a gorge.
Scored. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so Bradley, 3 points to start us off. Steven, you're up now. Let's see what you got here. All right. In 2001 against Rutgers, WVU set a Mountaineer single game record for most points scored. How many points did they score? Is it A, 70, B, 80, C, 81, or D, 77?
I'm gonna go with A 70.
Oh, off on that one. Brad, chance to
Wait.
steal.
What was the question?
In 2001 against Rutgers, WVU set a Mountaineer single game record for most points scored. How many points did they score?
Oh, I hate
Stevie
myself.
went with 70. Not quite, but you'd have 3 other options now, Brad. B, 80, C, 81, or D, 77.
I think it was 77.
77, also incorrect. So Cat gets this one, guys. Actually, 80.
Wow, did
80
not know
points.
that. Actually, did not know that at all.
Yeah.
That's
I
wild.
feel like 80's a tough one. 80's a tough one to get to, too.
Yeah. I think that team, that was like Rich Rod's first year, didn't have the best record, but did have an 80-point game, crazy enough. Of course, it was against Rutgers, so go
Yeah,
figure.
that was before Greg Schiano Rutgers too.
All right, Brad, back to you, man.
Back to me.
We're still 3-0. In what year was the now famous Flying WV logo designed? Is it A, 1978, B, 1982, C, 1980, or D, 1975?
So I was kind of hoping that I'd be able to rely on the film that we just watched from the 84 season to help me tell that it was eliminate some, but they were all before that. Read me the options again.
Okay. A is 78, B, 82, C, 80, or D, 1975?
I'm going to say 1982.
So you went with B, 1982? No, not quite. So, Steven, chance to steal. Your 3 options left: 1978, 1980, or 1975.
I was really hoping that Brad would take one of the 2 options that I had in my mind away because I'm teetering between. I don't think it was 75 because that was before but that was before Nealon got there. I'm gonna go with 1980.
Hey, we got a steal. 5 points for Steven.
Nice.
So 5-3 now. And Steven, you got a chance to extend the lead. Your question here. Let's see what we got.
I do want to say, shout out to Water Valley High School in Mississippi. If you guys haven't seen that on X the last couple of days, they used a flying WV.
That's why I know that. Yes, a lot of people were mad and upset about it. I was like, man, that's awesome.
So, hey, brand exposure. There's gonna be some kid in Mississippi that's gonna be so excited to.
Exactly. I said brand notoriety, man.
But West Virginia is also weird with their stuff.
There's like a couple high schools in New Jersey that use it as well. I'm like, dang, I never knew this.
Well, I don't know. To me, I didn't understand why people got upset about it. I mean, like pretty much any high school in the country is they steal from what college. I mean, even Bluefield High School right down here uses Oregon State's Beaver logo.
Oregon State, yeah.
I mean, so like I've never understood how people get mad about that for a high school using it.
Yeah, it's just extra exposure, like Brad said. I agree.
Yeah.
All right, Steven. Here we go. Steven up 5-3 right now. I hold the record for longest punt return in WVU history. Who am I? Is it A, Willie Drury, B, Tavon Austin, C, Danny Bug, or D, Victor Rabbits?
Tavon had electrifying returns, but I don't think he had the longest punt return. Oh, out of sheer instinct, I'm gonna say Danny Bugs.
Danny Bugs, incorrect. Brad,
Hmm.
chance to steal.
I mean, I
Offense.
know that Tavon had a hundo. I know that he had a 100-yard return.
Well, that's kick
But
return. We're
I was
talking
just say
punt
you got a
return.
kickoff.
punt return. Okay.
You got A. Willie Drury, B. Tavon, and D. Victor Rabbits.
What a name.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Victor Rabbit to say just because no other reason than the name.
That's a good choice because that's who it is.
Good
And
stuff, man. Good stuff. Because
Rabbits has got the feet.
my second choice was gonna be Willie Drury.
that if I was
got that
answering, I
completely
would have
wrong.
went with Bugs or Drury probably too. I probably wouldn't have went with Rabbits, but good stuff, Brad. So Brad gets the steal.
Yeah.
5 points for Brad. So Brad's up at 8-5 now. And it's your question, Brad.
Yeah, I just got to get this right.
In what year did the first ever female mascot debut at WVU? Is it A 1980, B 1990, C 2008, or D 1975?
I'm going to say 1990.
Good job, Brad. Good job.
Hey.
That's correct. I threw 2008 in there because I
Dang,
thought to throw
Brad
people off. We
took
did
a
have
hell
the
of a lead.
female in 2008.
Yeah, no, I felt like it was.
That bumped him up, man. So was it 11-5 now? Brad with the lead. Back to you, Steven. We'll run through one more round here. Unfortunately, I own the record for most interceptions thrown in a single game at WVU with 6 interceptions. Who am I? Is it A, Oliver Luck, B, Dan Kendra, C, Dutch Hoffman, or D, Mike Sherwood?
Oh my lord! Can I phone someone?
Phone a friend.
I have no idea. Oh man, to be honest with you, the only name I know on that list is Oliver Luck. That's painful to admit, but can you name them again? I don't
Okay, so
forgot.
you got
No.
Oliver Luck, Dan Kendra, Dutch Hoffman, Mike Sherwood.
Going since I don't know, I don't think it was Oliver. That would be talked about a lot more. With as good of a quarterback as Oliver Luck was, I would think that would be talked about more if he did that. Ah, shit. Mike Sherwood. We'll just go with one.
Ooh, close, but not quite. So, Brad, chance to steal. Is it Ollie, Dan Kendra? Is it Dutch Hoffman?
I'm just going to say Dan Kendra.
Nope, incorrect. It actually was Dutch Hoffman. 6 interceptions in a game.
Man, I'm great at eliminating options. Picking the right one that I'm having.
I mean,
I
when you were saying that about Oliver, I wanted to be like, yeah, it wasn't Oliver, but I'm like, I can't give it. That's the hardest part
Can't
is when
give
I'm
it out,
asking,
yeah.
and you guys are thinking I'm trying not to like give anything away in my
Right.
face.
I had my mic
trying
muted,
to,
but I
like, go
said
through-
Jordan's still reserve look. I was like, he's just so very.
I'm trying
Keep
so
your
hard
full
not to give
composure.
it away.
I was gonna say
All
because
right.
Cruz is just like, you got it.
I'm just
You
like,
got
I don't know.
it.
Maybe.
Hey, shout out! I don't know if you came up with these questions or not, Cruz, but they're really good trivia questions.
I mean, I researched them. I didn't come up with them. I wouldn't have known the answers to half of them myself. That's for sure. All right, Brad, back to you. 11-5 lead currently. Steven, you get a steal though. You're right back in this thing.
All right, we got this.
All right, Brad.
Still remains.
In what year did WVU play their first ever night game? Is it A, 1940, B, 1944, C, 1969, or D, 1980?
I'm going to say 1969.
Oh, no, sir. Steven, chance to steal. This is a big one. First ever night game at WVU. Was it 1940, 1944, or 1980?
I actually have a lot of confidence in this answer, and I really hope that I don't have false confidence because I believe that old Mountaineer Field did not have lights. And so when they built new Mountaineer Field, that was one of the major things that they had that was a major addition to it was they added lights to that stadium. They built that in 1980. I'm going to go with 1980.
I like your strategy, but it was actually 1940.
Was it really?
Wow.
Yeah, 1940. Surprised me
Wow.
too.
Was I right
At
about
least
that
playing-
though?
playing-
Old Mountaineer Field
playing by
didn't
the
have
candlelight.
lights, correct?
I don't. Not that I'm not 100% sure to say one way or the other, but it makes sense. Made sense in my
don't
head when
think-
you were going through it.
No, the reason I say that is because like you guys got to realize like I have seen countless drawings and pictures and depictions of old Mountaineer Field because my grandfather, lived right beside of it, and so
Right.
like he's got a lot of pictures with his old house like right beside the stadium and all that. Not once have I ever noticed that there's like towers for lights or any kind of lights in the pictures. So that's
Interesting.
surprising.
Maybe they just maybe they had lights off the press box, or maybe they just pulled cars up and had
It's
car
like
hit.
Well,
candlelight, dude.
and also, if you've, I don't know, Cruz might have read it. I don't know if you've ever read it, Brad. There's a book that Don Nealon wrote,
Oh yeah,
and narrated called "Tales from the Sidelines," and he talks a lot about
I think I've got.
the construction of Milan Puskar Stadium. And yes, that book. It's a great, great book, especially if you're a Mountaineer fan. But it's a great book regardless. But he talks about the construction of Mountaineer Field and what it meant to WVU at the time and why it was so important for us to get that stadium built. And one of the reasons he noted was because we could have lights at the stadium, obviously a bigger venue, but the location of it, having lights there, you can play night games, have a lot more bigger opponents, better opponents. It really kind of solidified WVU as being on the map as one of the top teams or upper echelon of teams in college football. So
Yep,
I'm thoroughly
definitely.
shocked.
It was huge. It was huge. I mean, when you were going through it in your head, I was like, yeah, his theory makes sense, but I'm looking at the answer and it's not right. But I'm like,
it's not right, but it makes sense.
It's off by 40 years. But
all right, Stephen, your question this time. I hope you get this one right, man.
I hope so too.
What is the state flower of West Virginia?
Rhododendron.
A. Okay, good job. Good job. He didn't even need the multiple
I knew
choice.
that one.
I figured that would be a pretty easy one. So that makes it 11-8. 11-8. Final round here. Final round. Brad, back to you. You could maybe extend your lead, maybe put this thing out of reach. We'll see what happens. All right. I have the longest touchdown reception in WVU football history with a 96-yarder. Who am I? Is it A, Danny Buggs, B, Stedman Bailey, C, Travis Garvin, or D, Tito Gonzalez?
I think it was Stedman. That's going to be my guess, yeah.
Good guess, but no cigar. Steven, chance to steal. Big time here. Could take the lead. Could win the game. Longest touchdown reception in WVU football history, a 96-yarder. A, Danny Buggs, C, Travis Garvin, D, Tito Gonzalez.
I'll go with Tito.
Tito Gonzalez? No, sir. Actually, Danny Buggs.
Danny Buggs.
Yep. 96
Danny
yarders.
Buggs.
I knew it wasn't
With that,
Garvin.
Rabbits and the bugs, dude.
Was Terrence
With
Garvin
that,
a
we
receiver?
will award
Terrence
Brad the
Garvin was
victory.
Terrence Garvin was a defensive back.
Terrence Garvin was defensive back. Travis Garvin, I threw him in there because I thought it'd throw some people off because if you remember when we beat Virginia Tech 28-7 when they were ranked number 3 in the country, he caught a 93-yard touchdown pass from Rasheed Marshall. I knew he had a 93-yarder, so I was like, I got to throw him in there as an option.
That is obviously a great, for a couple of reasons. Like I just said, like I immediately went to Terrence Garvin. I was like, nope, not him.
I do too. Every time I see Travis Garvin, I think of Terrence Garvin, but I guess because it's just more recent. But
yeah,
I guess that'll do it for Mountaineer Multiple Choice this week. We're going to continue to try and bring this back throughout the season as much as possible, as much as time permits. When we have a lot of things to discuss, might not be able to get to it, but we always enjoy it. Hope you guys enjoyed it too. And slow clap, Bradley. Nice victory there. Nice victory, sir.
We'll get one of these crowns eventually, man.
Steven, I do give you bonus points for shouting out an answer without even hearing the choices. That's awesome.
Hey, man, thank you, man. I wanted to take that opportunity. It doesn't happen a lot. Ask me any state sign for West Virginia, I'm going to get that right off the bat. Like, I know all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should make that a future edition, that if you know the answer without even the choices being read off, it's like bonus points or something. Might have to do that in the future.
You can get a 5 points for that.
Yeah, that could be a 5-pointer.
At least 3.
Yeah.
At least 3.
All right. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, gentlemen. So that's pretty much all I've got here planned for us. We talked a little recruiting, a little Big 12, reached back into the highlight reel, talk about some Penn State games of yesteryear in which the Mountaineers were victorious, and looked ahead even to the upcoming August 31st matchup. And it's been a fun episode, but anything you guys want to throw in here at the tail end, any plugs you got or any topics you want to hit on before we close out? You got anything, Stephen?
One short thing that I know I've mentioned it at least 100 times on this podcast in years past. I know especially whenever the old head coach that we had was here. I've said it a billion times. So I just wanted to give a really huge shout out to Big Daddy Neil Brown and taking that $400,000 pay cut, paying his assistant coaches. That's what I've been preaching for, of what we need to do to solidify, maybe not solidify, but to keep our assistant coaches intact and not let them jump ship as soon as we have a solid staff on our hands. Can't speak enough about that. I mean, that speaks volume about the kind of coach that this man is. So I wanted to shout that out. I don't think I've loved anything more than that specifically by that man in general. I mean, he can recruit his ass off. He can do all these things, coach the games. It's those little things that are going to make you a successful coach, and especially at a place like WVU. So just wanted to shout that out.
Hey, well-deserved shout-out. That's big-time stuff. And Neil Breezy set for a big year, and I think he's about to have this program on a roll. So I like that. Bradley, anything you got here at the tail end?
Yeah, no, and I think that to kind of expand upon Steven's topic, you hear all of our coaches talking about this is where they want to be at. This is a long-term position for them. Like, they're really happy where they're at. They all got families. They're all family-oriented, and they love growing up their families in West Virginia. So it's one of those things where if you see wins, man, there's not going to be anybody going anywhere. They're all kind of here for the long haul, and that's some stuff that can really be not only life-changing for our program and our football team, but also our state.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm not going to drag it on because I know we're trying to get out of here, guys, but I do just want to say, with the way the West Virginia's positioned right now, I know we've talked a lot about it, but, this position in the new Big 12 or whatever they're going to call it tomorrow, whenever we find out, I think the West Virginia is set up for not just moderate success, but great success if they continue on the trajectory that they're at. And I'm pointing to what the old Big East was whenever Miami had left them originally, and West Virginia immediately stepped in, took over that conference. I think that they are very much in the same position to be able to do the same thing now. The only difference is you have a guy willing to pay his assistant coaches and keep his staff intact. Those things are what make me so optimistic as a WVU fan. And you can call it unrealistic, you can call it whatever you want. I'm looking at facts, and those are the facts.
I like that. Well said, gentlemen. And I completely agree on both accounts, both Neil Brown, his selflessness and what he did this offseason. A lot of people saw the extension, didn't check out the fine print and see that it was not only, beneficial for him, but beneficial for this program. Paying those assistants is a big time thing. And I think that West Virginia is set up right now and has a chance to, maybe get on another, golden run like they did, similar maybe to what we had 05 to 07, as Steven mentioned there. West Virginia is in position. They could take over this Big 12 conference. It's wide open this year, and they got a great chance. And let's not forget, whoever wins this Big 12 conference and wins that Big 12 title game, you're not only in the playoffs, you're in the playoffs with a first-round bye as one of the top 4 seeds. So big things to look forward to on the horizon potentially, and we're excited to talk about them here as we get into this 2024 season. But as we close this episode, just want to hit you guys with a couple of reminders. We appreciate you checking out this episode, whether you viewed it or listened to it. If you did watch it here on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, hit that like button, helps a ton with the YouTube algorithm. Of course, be sure to subscribe here to the channel if you're a WVU football fan. Ton of content coming your way the closer we get to the season, and do the same there on any podcast platform you like, Apple, iHeart, Amazon, you name it. You can find us on any of those. And of course, you can check us out on WVSportsNow.com, where you can find all kinds of great Mountaineer sports content as well. And just be sure to follow us on social media, where you can find out when the episodes will be releasing. We're at WVU Country Roads on X/Twitter, and then just Country Roads Webcast on Facebook and Instagram. Having said that, it's been another great episode. We hope you guys enjoyed listening to it as much as we did creating it here. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll have another one coming at you here in the near future as we get closer and closer to inching towards season 7 of the podcast, which will kick off with our season prediction roundtable. Always a fan favorite and one of our favorite episodes to produce. So be on the lookout for that in the near future, and any episodes that come in the meantime and in between time. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz for my co-hosts Steven and Bradley. Until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those